Hi, boys and girls. So yesterday I had you go on this page. Sorry, I'm very dark for some reason. I had you guys go on this website and I had you kind of play around and see what you could come up with, changing the slope and changing the y-intercept. It was just kind of an investigation for you guys to see what would happen. I wanted to start today by talking about yesterday's activity. So I ended yesterday with, could you figure out the perpendicular line to y equals 2x? And some of you came up and you said y equals negative 2x. And when you did that, if you look, the lines aren't quite perpendicular. They're definitely in opposite ways, as one has a positive slope and one has a negative slope, but they are not perpendicular. For those of you who got it correct, the perpendicular line is actually negative 1/2 x. And so anytime we're looking at two different slope-intercept form, where it's the y equals mx plus b, to get a perpendicular line, you have to find the opposite reciprocal. So if I think about that, the opposite of 2 is negative 2, and the reciprocal of negative 2 is negative 1/2. And so to find that perpendicular line, you're looking for the opposite reciprocal. And so that's how you would find the perpendicular line. Food for thought, just to let you guys know, if I was looking for a parallel line, I would do the same slope, but I might add 5. And those two lines are parallel. They're never going to intersect, and they are staying the same distance apart. So then here I've got y equals 2x minus 3. All three of those lines are parallel because they have the same slope. So they're on the same steepness. So that's just kind of closing out yesterday's stuff. Today we're going to start with some new notes. And our notes are exactly on this. It's on slope-intercept, and we are going to be graphing slope-intercept form. So we started talking already about this. I'm going to move myself over here. So we started talking yesterday about slope-intercept form. Yesterday was completely just an investigation. I just wanted to see what you could come up with, see what you saw. So y equals mx plus b is what's called slope-intercept form, and it's really important that we understand that that's what it's called. We have to know that the m is in reference to the slope. That means that my m is telling me how far to go up, how far to go over, how far to go up, how far to go over, whether it's a positive slope or a negative slope. It's backwards for you. Sorry, the screen flips it. And so then B, we need to remember, is my y-intercept. And what that means is whatever I have for B is where the line will cross the y-axis. And so what I can do if I'm graphing a linear equation that is in slope-intercept form, which is exactly what we're going to be doing today, I can take my y-intercept, plot a point, and then I am able to then take my slope and do my rise, run, put another point. Then I can do my rise, my run, and put another point. And so I'm able to actually create my line without having to plug in a number and see what I get out for y. Plug in a number and see what I get out for y. I could do that, but honestly, if something's given to me in slope-intercept form, it's 100 times easier to just plot my y-intercept, do a couple of my slopes, and call it a day. So here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be taking these 3 steps. Step 1 is we're going to be graphing the y-intercept. And step 2 is going to be using the slope to create more points. Rise, run, rise, run. And then step 3, you should be using a ruler or you should be using a tool on the computer since we're all digital right now. That's a straight line. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to start with number 1. Anytime we're doing this, I know I said the first thing we're doing is plotting our y-intercept, but before I do that, I just want to make sure, does this say y equals? And if it does, then I'm going to look to make sure, do I have an x? And if so, I'm in slope-intercept form. And so I'm going to look, what's my slope? 2/3. How do I know it's 2/3? Because that's the coefficient to x. What's my y-intercept? I hope you said 1. It is 1. So once I've figured out those 2 things, I am now going to be able to graph this without actually plugging in any x's or plugging in any y's. I know what my line is going to be right off the bat. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my y-intercept. So that's where the B is. So it's at 1, which means on the y line, I'm going to put a dot at 1. Now, I'm going to attempt to zoom in a little bit. We're going to see how well this goes. As we all know, technology can sometimes be amazing, and it can sometimes be frustrating, like it is right now, because I'm not actually zooming, but it's a little delayed. There we go. Okay, so I plotted a point at 0, 1. Then I'm going to take my slope. My slope says 2/3. That means that my slope says, if I can get a highlighter here, that means I'm going to be going up 2, and then I go over 3. You notice that those are both positive. So because they're both positive, I'm going to go up the 2, and then I'm going to go to the right 2. Which for you guys is this way. So once I do that, I go ahead, I count up. I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, plot another point. Then I get to do it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Plots another point. Now the part that I want you guys to understand is that I wanted to do another point. I actually can't keep going up. So because I can't keep going up, can I go the other way? And the answer is yes. So because they're both positive, I could also think of them as both being negative, because negative divided by negative is positive. So if I was at my y, I could actually go down 2 and to the left 3 and plot my next point. Once I have about 3 points, I go ahead and I'm going to make my line. So I making my line, connecting all my dots, and I've just graphed my line. So I literally y-intercept point. Then I'm doing my rise over my run. My rise over my run. So the 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. It's like you're making stairs. Let's try another one. So number 3, what's the slope? I'm hoping you said -1/2, because that's indeed what it is. What's my y-intercept? Don't say 4. It's not 4. It's -4. Don't forget about those negatives. Don't forget that that subtraction sign always, 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 always goes with the number that's after it. So I have my subtraction, and that goes to the number after it. So it's not +4. Even though we don't see a negative in front of it, that subtraction sign belongs to the number after it. So therefore, it actually is -4. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, and I plot my point. Now here you'll see I've got -1/2 as a slope. So if it's positive, I'm going up. If it's positive, I'm going right. If it's negative, I might go down or I might go left. So what I'm looking for here is I know this is negative half. So I'm going to take this and think of it as if it were to say, I need the marker. All right, I'm going to think of it as saying either, I don't want it to be yellow, negative 1 over 2, or I could think of it as 1 over negative 2. Just remembering that only one of them is going to go in the negative direction. Because as we know, as Slope Guy taught us, do you guys remember Slope Guy? Let's see if I can make Slope Guy real quick. I'm going to attempt. We're going to see how this goes. Whoa! All right, so here's my Slope Guy. Slope Guy's not going so good right now. So Slope Guy has a positive I, and it's got a negative I. So if my line's going this way, if my line's going this way, it's a positive. If it's going this way, it's a negative. Remembering that Slope Guy needs a nose. If my line is going straight up and down, it has an undefined slope. Now he needs a mouth because that U is actually part of his nose. And if my line is horizontal, I've got a 0 slope. Ooh, not too bad for, and then, Slope Guy. We always like to give him some hair. So there's his red radical hair. So again, let's go back to number 3. I have a negative slope. Remembering Slope Guy says negative slope is gonna look like this. So if my negative slope looks like this, then I know I'm either gonna go -1, 2. So here we go. I'm going to go down 1 and to the right 2. I went down 1 because I'm using the negative as the numerator. And then the denominator is positive. So then I'm going to the right 2. So then I go down 1 over 2. Ooh, I got both of those. Perfect. Now, if I wanted to go the other way and look at 1 as a positive and 2 as my negative, I would be going up 1 and then to the left 2. Up 1 and to the left 2. And so once I have those few items blocked, then I go ahead, I take my straight edge, whatever it may be, and I connect my dots to make my line. So I double check my work. Number 1, it says it's a positive slope. Slope Guy tells me that's indeed a positive slope. Number 2 says it's a negative slope. Slope Guy goes ahead and shows me that's a negative slope. You're good to keep going on. So if I'm looking at number 5, I wanted to look at number 5 because if I think about this, my slope is actually 2 and my B is -5. What I need to remember is that with slope, I need a rise and a run. Well, if I have a whole number, what's my denominator? My denominator is 1. So this is the same thing as saying 2 over 1. They're the exact same thing, but it's very important that we understand that because after we graph the -5, I need to recognize that I can go up 2 and then I have to go over 1. So I'm going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I could have gone down 2 over 1, whichever way, and then I'm able to go ahead and graph that. Again, couple things that I want to remind you. This one in particular, when we have a whole number, remember that that denominator is actually 1. All right, so we're going to look at the second page. Now remember, pause, go back, review, see what you need. I wanted to look at number 6 here. Oops, there we go. 6. I didn't mean to click that, but I did already. So what I want to talk about with number 8 is that notice that there's not a coefficient to x. It just says negative. Well, if there's not a coefficient, it means that the slope is 1, which means 1 over 1. This one is negative, so therefore it's negative 1 over 1. And my y-intercept is negative 6. So again, when I'm graphing, I start with my y-intercept of negative 6. I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit. It didn't let me, so that's fine. And then I know that I have a negative slope. Slope guy goes ahead. He tells me my negative slope is going to look like this. So I'm realizing I'm going to go up, down 1, over 1. Oh, and they were all graphs. So I either went down 1, over 1. It's backwards for you guys. Down 1, over 1. Or I went up 1, over 1. So either whichever way you want to do it, you can do it. And then from there, I graph. What I want you to get out of this one is to make sure that you know that if there's no number in front of that coefficient, it's 1. Okay? And then last, I want to talk about number 13. Number 13 looks a little different than any of the others. Why? Because this doesn't say y equals mx plus b. It says y equals 5 minus 1/3 x. But it actually is. It's just that those two things are flip-flopped. And so here, my slope is going to be negative 1/3. Remembering that that subtraction sign goes to whatever's after it, so that's why it's negative 1/3. And my y-intercept is 5. There we go. So when I go ahead and I plot it, I've got 5. Then because it's a negative slope, it's going to look like this. That's what slope guy tells me. I'm going to go down 1 over 3. Down 1 over 3, or I could have gone up 1 over 3. Whichever way I chose to do it, it's not wrong either way. Sometimes I don't have space to go one way, but I have space to go the other way. So if that's the case, that's the case. It's not a big deal. You got to go the way you got to go. All right. Oh, I turned into a darker line that I'm not a huge fan of. There we go. So let's change that real quick to be thinner. There we go. There we go. I don't mind that it's... All right, so there's my line. So then the only one I didn't go over that I actually wanted to go over was this number 7. Notice that it doesn't have a B. It just has an M. So I have my M equals negative 5, but I actually don't have a B. My B is 0. So if my B is 0, that just means that it crosses at the origin. And then I would go up 5, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I would go over 1, except what did I do wrong? Anyone? That would be a positive slope because I just went positive, positive. Oh, sorry. I just went positive, positive. That's a negative, or that's a positive slope, and my slope here is negative. So if I'm going to go, I can go down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1, or I could have gone up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1, because this one had to be a negative slope. So once I've got that done, we'll see if this works this time. Nope, it did it again, but you get the drift. So main thing that I want to get here is that I want you to understand that, there we go. When you're doing these problems, I need you to understand if it's in slope-intercept form, which is going to be the form that you're going to be dealing with today, you need to know your slope, you need to know your y-intercept. Then when you start graphing, you graph your y-intercept, and then you count your rise, run, plot your points, make your line. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, let me know, and I will chat with you all later. Have a good day, guys.